Well, good morning.
Morning.
Nice to see you. Nice to be here. Just feel the presence of other beings beside yourself in this room. I'm referring to physical beings and whatever else you might be aware of. But just experiencing the pleasure of being in community once again, not just virtual community, but physical community. Even though it is a unusual sense of community, we embrace the world as it is. And we recognize that whatever is all that we ever have. The mind may say, someday we'll get back to normal. And then the mind sometimes says, what the hell is normal anyway, you know? It's kind of gone, isn't it? So here we are. The title of my talk this morning is on wings of freedom, on the wings of freedom. So I want to begin with a story about a family of eagles, Mommy and Daddy Eagle, and several little eaglets that were flying along, and everything was going fine except a thunderstorm developed, and the wind began to get more intense, and there was rain and updrafts, and it became very difficult to fly, and particularly for the little eagles, the eaglets, and one of them got lost and confused and didn't know what to do. And so all he could do was to go down and find shelter in a tree and to ride out the storm in a tree, where he had a certain degree of safety, even though he didn't know where his family was. And when the sun rose in the morning, he looked around and he saw some birds on the ground below him. And he heard a sound that he never heard before. It was kind of a clucking sound. And he saw these birds, these strange characters. They were scratching at the ground and they were eating, and they looked pretty fat and healthy. He was hungry. Even though he didn't know who they were, he invited himself to dinner. So he came down and began to eat with the flock. And as the story goes, he was so comfortable, he decided to stay for a while. He didn't know where his family was, and so eventually this became his new family, this flock of chickens, as it were. And so he would just blend in with the chickens, and the chickens seemed to accept him, and he was happy, except he missed his family, but he was fed and he was taken care of. But then one day, a park ranger happened to be driving by. This tree was near a national park, and the park ranger saw the eagle in the middle of the chickens and thought, what the heck is going on here? So he went in and picked up the eagle and took him up to a high bluff. And he said to the eagle, he says, look, you don't belong down there with those chickens. You're a creature of the sky. You're a creature of freedom. You're not a creature that scratches the earth for what you need and what you want. So spread your wings and fly. And he gave him a little toss. And the young eagle, flapped his wings a little bit and went out 20 or 30 feet and looked down and said, oh my God, this is pretty dangerous and scary. And so he circled back and came back where the ranger was, landed on the earth, began to cluck once again, and scratch at the dirt, looking for food. But the ranger, he was undaunted. He had faith in this young eagle. And so every day he would take this eagle up to the bluff. And every day the eagle would fly a little bit further, but would still come back. It felt good to fly, but the eagle didn't want to let go of the safe earth, or what felt safe to him. And the park ranger was undaunted, very patient man. And one day, as he waited for the eagle to return, he waited, and he waited. And with a certain sense of sadness and with a great deal of joy, he knew that the eagle had found his heritage, his true being, his true way of living. He remembered who he was. He was not a creature of the earth that was scratching for whatever he could get, but he was a magnificent eagle that could fly anywhere. And so, as the story goes, every once in a while the eagle would come back and fly around above the ranger, flap his wings and say hello, and then take off again, just to remind the ranger that he was safe and free, and to thank him for his priceless teaching, training. And so it is that every once in a while a great teacher comes along, like the Buddha, like Christ, like Krishna, Muhammad, etc., etc. Great teachers that have the ability to look at humanity and say, this is not who you really are. You're not a creature of the earth destined to scratch in the dirt, but you are a creature of spirit. So spread your wings and fly. And the wings that are offered in the Buddhist tradition, the tradition of the Dharma, are the wings of practice, the wings of our meditation practice. And oftentimes it's said that the wings of the bird of liberation, of freedom, are twofold. On the one hand, there is the wing of awareness. We practice awareness. The other is the wing of equanimity. And these are referred to as wings because they need to work together. You know, the bird doesn't fly by flapping one wing and then flapping the other wing, but the two have to work together. And yet at times, the two need to work independently. If the bird's going to turn or circle or something like that, the one wing has to be different than the other. So let's talk about each of these wings and how we can use them to realize our innate freedom. So just a reminder, and for some of you it's not a reminder, but for many of us it is, about awareness. Awareness has different qualities that we want to cultivate. And one of the practices is that we want to be as continuously aware as possible. And that's extremely important and helpful to not have breaks in our awareness, to not space out and go to sleep. And so we try to come back to the practice, whatever it is. Even throughout our day, the practice is just to remind ourselves to breathe, or just to be aware that I'm standing, or I'm sitting, or I'm speaking. Just to be aware of sensations in the body. Whatever it is, but to be present, and to be present as continuously as possible. That's one of the values of attending a retreat, is the environment is set up so that that's all that we need to do, is to simply be aware And we can practice being aware moment by moment by moment. Because as you know, it's more difficult in the world. Most of us don't live and work in a world that encourages mindfulness and continuous awareness. We live in a world that encourages mindlessness and continuous distraction. So we're kind of swimming upstream. So that's why Sangha, retreats, extended practice can be very helpful. Another factor in awareness is that of what's called bare attention, B-A-R-E. Some teachers call it naked awareness. And it has nothing to do with what you may or may not be wearing while you're meditating, but it's more about the quality of your awareness, in the sense that what we're aware of, we add nothing to in the mind. We add no commentary, no judgment. It's just, it is what it is. And what it is not what we think it is. It's just whatever the experience is. So we just breathe without evaluating our breath. We live our life without calling it good or bad, right or wrong. Each experience is what each experience is. We just directly. As the Buddha would often say, in the seeing, there's just seeing. In the hearing, there's just hearing. In the sensing, there's just sensing. In other words, we're not adding any commentary to it. We're not adding any judgment, analysis, et cetera, et cetera. Now, there are times when that can be helpful, but when we're doing it unconsciously and continuously, it's not helpful. Because what that does is it puts a barrier between ourselves and our direct experience of life. So it's like we never really touch life as it is. Most of us live inside the prison cell of the mind. And we see the world through the bars. We see the world through the windows of our mental prison cell, rather than actually touching the world as it really is. So that's what bare attention is. Some teachers call it the naked awareness. And another quality of awareness is that of precision, to try to be as clear, precise as possible. And to illustrate that, I simply remove my glasses, and I can say I'm aware of you right now. I'm aware of each of you in a visual field. Now I'm aware of you much more clearly. You have faces. I can see eyes and ears and so on and so forth. See, I can see more clearly and precisely. So we want to sharpen our awareness, keep the awareness continuous, and to be aware without adding anything to it in terms of analysis or interpretation or evaluation. So that's the wing of awareness. The wing of equanimity. Equanimity simply means to accept everything equally. So there are degrees of equanimity. You know, the first layer may be simply tolerating our experience, non-resisting what's here. You know, maybe a grudging acceptance of what's here, but we're not resisting it actively. But then as we deepen equanimity, it isn't just an acceptance of what's here, but it's a welcoming of what's here. We make friends with every experience. And ultimately, it's bringing a kindness and a love to every experience. So sometimes people will say, well, how can I love myself? Because that's something everyone, presumably, wants to do, is to love themselves. And the simplest way, I believe, is simply to love every experience, because that's what we are, is our experiences. So just make peace with every experience, make friends with every experience that you have. And if you can't, that's okay too. We don't bring any judgment to it. We just allow it to be what it is. So we do our practice. We don't evaluate our practice as good or bad. We're not experts. We're not beginners. Sometimes in the Zen tradition, they say, let the mind be like the bird in flight. When you see the bird flying across the sky, the bird leaves no tracks. You can't tell where the bird has been, you see. And so when we have an experience, have it and let it go. There's no tracks. There's no aftermath, so to speak. There's no regret. There's no pride. There's no holding on to it. It's simply there and gone. There's nothing behind it. So these two wings can lead to freedom. They can lead to true wisdom. They lead to compassion. So it's important to recognize how we can get out of balance with each of these. Sometimes some of us tend to be more type A, effort prone. We want to be very aware, precisely aware, but there can be a hardness or an edge to that awareness. There can be a sort of a personal pushing. You know, I'm going to be aware no matter what, damn it. You know, I'm just going to. So that's flapping the one wing too much. On the other hand, there are those folks that will say, I love to meditate, and you know, it's just really great because every time I do, I wake up refreshed, and it's better than a nap, you see. Well, that's nice. That's equanimity. You know, we may be accepting our experience, but we're not particularly aware of what's going on, you see. And that's not helpful either. So bringing the clarity of awareness with the softness, with the heart of equanimity. And so there's times when the wind is blowing hard, strong wind, the bird needs to work extra hard. And when the wind is back or he's in an updraft, he can glide with very little effort. And so sometimes our practice is that way. We have practices where we can feels like we're just sailing. It's just a clear, open awareness. The next thing we know, here comes a thunderstorm. And the thunderstorm can be any number of things. It could be pain in the body. It can be an emotional thunderstorm. It can be environmental, noise, heat, whatever the case might be. But we sometimes have factors that seem to intrude upon our experience. And when that happens, it's important to recognize that just as a bird flying into a headwind needs to work harder just to stay stable, so we may need to bring extra effort into our practice. Remind ourselves, maybe I'm not 90% aware, maybe I'm only 5% aware. That's okay. Am I doing the best that I can? You say. Same way with equanimity. There's no judgment. Just recognizing that we bring the qualities to the practice and we're not measuring, am I doing it good? Am I doing it? I've been a school teacher of one form or another most of my life. And so I find it very easy to evaluate everything as an A, B, C, A minus, B plus, and so forth. And I'd find I would automatically do that to each of my sittings, you know, after a retreat. I'd say, well, that was about a B minus, you know. I have to work a little harder this way, you see. So that habitually evaluating is not particularly helpful. So bringing greater awareness, reminding ourselves to relax and to open more fully, sometimes it takes that extra effort. So it's really important to recognize the mind wants to say, okay, I begin here and I go up and up and up and up and up, you see. It doesn't work that way in this practice. So letting go of all of those metaphors of getting somewhere, getting better, improving. You know, I've been doing this for 20 years. Why does my mind still wander? You know, all of that stuff, just letting it go and just flapping the wings, just breathing, just being present, because that's the only way the bird can fly, is in this moment. Just keep your wings moving. So, thank you for sharing your practice with us, and may all beings know their true nature and flap their wings accordingly. So it be.